agenda. This is the
It
first
was
time I
really
had it.
beautiful.
Hey, Ashton? Oh, I didn't want to interrupt. Do anybody know what the password for
Everyone does that
Oh,
though.
yes.
because
Sedro-Woolley City
it's
is?
so beautiful
It's
to see 'em.
SWLY.
SWLY?
Yeah, it's all lowercase.
My husband, I stopped to get the mail.
98284.
S
And then I'm trying to find his picture.
S
He took
W
pictures.
L
98284.
Anyway, it just makes you feel like
Yeah.
everything's just so pretty. Anyway,
He hooked me up with the new.
Thank you.
I have no idea. I have 15 million pictures of my dogs and my kids.
Yeah, make sure he gets it, thanks. Like check the founders for 100 pictures.
It's like someone wants to find something and it's lost.
I'm gonna download these.
I need to. My
Did
phone
you
is
also
so
not have your charge cord when you gave your iPad back?
Well, I just
to
came
me?
in because I was like, I can't access my mail anymore.
I couldn't
And,
either.
and she laughed and Woody and those guys were there, and so yeah, they just set me up while I was there. And I said, oh, I'll bring the, yeah, so I gave it to
I didn't have a problem until he set me up on here. And I was all logged in and everything, and then when I went to log in,
They don't really want me there.
yeah, and I don't have Outlook.
So my
I have an app
husband,
on here, so you have to.
we have a big
It's in the web browser and it's logged in the app and it won't.
and a friend of ours.
And I tried using my Windows
lives
password on the off chance it does not.
further out.
So you still don't have mail on it?
Correct.
One of our, we were going out of town, and so my husband drove.
Well, I thought I did, cause I made sure it was all everywhere for me, cause he set me up after the joint council meeting.
Here in the building, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think it's because you were at home and you run your home Wi-Fi, or?
But
No, I mean, I was able to connect to Wi-Fi just fine. I mean, I was able to go online, get the package, but I just, if we got any important emails, ironically, the first time it's ever been on the agenda, I can't get it.
They're all important, but, yeah, I know when I got mine home, I had to link it to my home Wi-Fi so I could read my stuff at home, so.
yeah, and that'd be great tax revenue, but you'd have to have stuff with me. I don't think I have the switching, I just sort of sat down.
Nope. Yeah, I'm used to it. They usually move us around so that
Keep us on our toes.
keeps on our toes, I think.
Okay, I think Sandra said she was gonna tune in.
Yeah, we got Cassandra up there and Joe Fatizzi.
I don't think that.
I'm here.
Matthew's up there too?
He's online, but his ride home was running late, so he might be a few minutes late online.
Okay.
Hello, Nicole. Casey took that picture because I have no pictures of myself.
Great, I went the first time. Very nice.
It's fine, I just think it's so funny because I was looking through pictures and I have no pictures of myself without my children right next to me. And so I went to Casey and I'm like, or Cassandra, and I was like, can you just do that? And so we're standing in her living room, she's like, she did it, it's amazing. But yeah, that worked out, it looks great.
Are we ready, Pat? Ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to call this meeting to order at 6:32, Sedro-Woolley Planning Commission, February 18th, 2025. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Get this a little closer. Roll call. Commissioner Huggins, I should say.
Yes. Present.
Commissioner DeVoynes? Not yet.
Here.
Oh, you are here.
Jim,
Great. Good timing. Commissioner Freiberger?
Present.
Commissioner Fatizzi?
Present.
Commissioner Jasper?
Present.
Commissioner Fournette, present. Commissioner Sexton?
Present.
Okay, we're all here one way or another. Did we all have a chance to, consent agenda, do we all have a chance to read the minutes? 6:33. Any comments? Doesn't look like it. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as written?
I make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Commissioner Jasper is the first. Does you have a second for that?
I'll second that. That's the minutes of January 2021, 2025.
Commissioner Freiberger, second. All those do want to approve the, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, the minutes are approved as written. Nicely done.
Yes.
Okay, moving right along, general public comments. Please keep comments to 3 minutes or less because state law prohibits the use of city facilities for the purpose of supporting or opposing a campaign or ballot proposition. We respectfully request that public comment not make reference to such matters. I didn't bring my glasses tonight, and my eyes are failing, sorry. Written comments will be accepted by letter or via email at nmcgowan@sedro-woolley.gov. Attention, public comment, until 4:30 p.m. the day of the meeting. Oh,
They make it
perfect.
too strong, but those
Thanks,
are my
Pat.
old strong ones, and now I've got my stronger strong ones.
See how this goes. So it's 6:35. We open general public comments. Do we have any general public comments?
No comments received in writing by staff.
Okay.
If you guys want to comment on the public hearing, I would wait, unless it's just a general comment, you can do so now.
Okay, so no general public comments. Am I correct in assuming that?
Was there anybody online too?
Pardon?
Are there any commissioners online too?
We have
Okay.
3 online.
Okay.
Oh, Commissioner Fatisi has his hand up.
No, I was just acknowledging that I'm here.
Oh, okay. He's there. Okay. So, general public comment, since there isn't any, will be closed at 6:36. And now we are at the public hearings segment for proposed amendments to Title 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code to update parking standards.
Okay, I'll give a brief rundown of where we've been so far since this is the public hearing. Then we'll take public comments, and then we'll go into discussion with staff and the commissioners. So the original concern for our parking update was brought by City Council in early 2024. Work-live units, some changes to the regulations were adopted in June. And one point of concern that was raised by council members then was a lack of off-street residential parking. That conversation then grew into a larger conversation for multifamily residential parking and then residential parking in general. Concerns from the council have mostly been related to the cost of housing and how larger families are now moving into smaller housing units where parking may not be sufficient. Concerns from the public primarily came from excessive parking in the public right-of-way, as well as a lack of visitor parking in some of our larger residential or mixed-use parking areas. Ultimately, what's been going on across the country, including in Bellingham and Spokane, is elimination of parking requirements. So these changes work to create a scaled approach so as to not create excessive parking, which was the intent of the changes in Bellingham and Spokane, but also to increase parking for those areas where the council and the public saw concerns. So that is where we're at with the draft amendments here. I've also attached, Senate Bill 6015 and Draft House Bill 1299. Draft House Bill 1299 is still in the legislature. It has not been approved yet, but Senate Bill 6015 has been approved. It's in effect, and we have until, I believe, our comprehensive plan deadline to adopt those changes. I've also added a little graphic onto the staff report that was provided. It does appear that we did have one point of confusion for the transit reduction in terms of parking. It was believed that the park and ride was the only transit facility that would be able to support more than two buses coming by within every hour for 12 hours on a standard weekday, which was the requirements to have the public transit parking reduction. I've circled a 1/4 mile radii on each of those transit stops. So we do have 5 in town. We have one near the pharmacy on State Route 20 that's operated by the Upper Skagit tribe, the Sedro-Woolley Park and Ride, and then the 3 bus stops outside of the hospital. Any residential development within a 1/4 mile of those stops would be subject to the parking reduction. So, given that brief overview of where we're at so far, I believe we can open it up to public comment for the public hearing portion of the meeting.
Okay. That being said, 6:39, do we invite our guests up at this point? Please step forward and state your name and address.
My name is Madison Bowman. My address is 2402 Oregon Avenue, Anacortes, Washington, 98221. Good evening. My name is Madison Bowman, and I'm the project planner with BYK Construction here in Sedro-Woolley. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today regarding the proposed parking regulation changes. Our team at BYK has thoroughly reviewed the draft parking regulations, and I've drafted the letter below along with Paul Woodmancy, the president of BYK Construction. Effective parking regulations and planning are crucial for a city like Sedro-Woolley. Similarly, developers cannot have successful multifamily or multi-purpose or multi-use projects without appropriately planning for parking for their buyers or tenants. Developers do not benefit financially from under-planning parking. In fact, it can actually hurt them or their buyers if properties are not adequately parked. We urge you to resist the lead by fear mentality, the fear that developers or property owners will build housing with no parking is unrealistic. This is Sedro-Woolley. We all want to have cars and trucks. Many of you have seen our ADU project at Bucko Estates. It turned out beautifully with 5 potential parking spaces on site for a 3-bedroom home with a 500 square foot ADU. This is plenty of parking for this property. Requiring 2 spaces for the ADU is unnecessary for such a small ADU. What we will get is more parking lots in front of homes or discouraging people from building these great housing options altogether. In the past, we have designed codes based on fear. Most recently, the ADU code comes to mind. Our final code required several items like design standards and recorded documents on title that forced owners to live in the home. The fear was that everyone would build ADUs throughout the city. The reality is that 3 or fewer ADUs have been built in Sedro-Woolley based on the new code. Construction of ADUs is difficult and costly. It takes someone with great composure, finances, and desire to have tenants to build an ADU on a property. Not many people have all 3 of these characteristics. Every property owner is not going to build an ADU in the city. The majority of these proposed code changes hinder the intent to provide more housing. From what we have heard, these requested changes in parking code are based on older projects experiencing parking issues, which should be better managed by property management companies. We were told that there is a specific location of complaint. If the city had parking enforcement as part of their staff, this issue could be resolved within weeks. The city needs to create and enforce parking regulations and codes on city property and offer resources to property owners who are impacted by others parking on their private property to resolve these problems. One idea would not to allow people to park in the right-of-way overnight. We would also encourage the city to hold property owners and property managers accountable for overfilling their units when it comes to parking requirements. Property owners who have unauthorized citizens parking on their property should be aware of their options. We need to govern new construction based on facts, not perceived problems at old, unmaintained, and unmanaged multifamily properties. To be very clear, we are not against parking regulations, and we are not advocating to reduce the existing parking regulations. We believe the parking regulations are sufficient as they are now. BYK contributed to writing the previous parking code for the UVMU, and it's important to note that BYK owns and manages most of the buildings we construct. Therefore, we have the tenant's best interests in mind when planning for parking. The increase in parking requirements in the UVMU seems irrelevant. Why are we changing the parking code in an area with only one completed project that hasn't shown any parking issues? These new requirements would have forced our newly built 820 Trail Road apartment mixed-use project to add 23 unnecessary parking stalls. This would eliminate landscape space for tenants, reduce the number of units that could be built, and potentially make this project unfeasible. The city of Sedro-Woolley needs to be more concerned with existing property management than further restricting future development within the city. We are still in the midst of a housing crisis, and further reducing the number of units constructed due to antiquated parking code is not good leadership. In conclusion, while we understand the intent behind the proposed regulation changes, we believe that some of these adjustments may inadvertently hinder the goal of providing more housing. Effective management and enforcement of new parking codes and existing codes can address many of the parking issues observed in older projects. We recommend the mayor and we commend the mayor and city council for working hard to improve our city. We understand there is always a problem to deal with, and parking is one of them. It's a difficult subject that should be discussed. We urge the council and commissioners to consider these points and ensure the final regulations support both practical future management and creative solutions for housing development. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Any letters? No one online? Okay. Ashton?
No letters received.
Okay. So, public comment. Let's see, where am I here? The public hearing. So the comments are over at 6:44, and now we can discuss it amongst ourselves.
Yeah, so I wanted to take the time to go ahead and chat about the changes we've made since the most recent meeting. I took some advice from Nicole, and I highlighted all the changes that were made from the last meeting. I figured we'll just start from the beginning and work our way through them. There is not too many changes this time around. First one you'll notice is 17.36.030. We've reduced the requirement for age for senior housing from 60 years of age to 55. Moving on to the table, we did consider the public comments that we have received. We did reduce the UVMU and the CBD parking to how they are currently written now. The only changes being that we've added a visitor parking requirement for those two zones. So the minimum parking requirement in the UVMU and CBD is the same as it is now. I should also add that parking maximums are still being implemented for those two zones. So those would be the two changes. I should correct myself. All right, moving on to 17.36.030, subsection C, subsection 4. I've just go ahead and reworded that section for the exceptions to parking requirements in the central business district. All of those requirements in there are currently in code right now, but it's in a box format in the CBD zoning chapter. So I've reworded that to make it flow or to improve the readability, and I've included it in 1736 now. Do we have any comments on those three sections that I've gone over so far? Okay, moving on to 17.36.035, reductions to required parking minimums. I have not changed anything in this since the last reading either, except for just rephrasing it for readability purposes once again. I've also clarified that the parking requirement reduction for underground or structured parking shall not be granted for single-family homes, ADUs, duplexes, triplexes. A garage will not count as the structured parking reduction. It has to be a parking garage. I've also clarified that applicants can only choose 2 from A, B, or C. They can't choose all 3. Okay, moving on to our loading facilities requirement, 17.36.050. We briefly discussed in the last meeting using loading zones for like a dual use between a loading facility during the day and a residential use at night. We've added that in here, just added some requirements for times, signage, turning clearance, things like that. We've also added a clause here that says that the loading facilities can't prevent any ADA accessible parking. The ADA parking comes first and then the loading facility. And I've also added a clause here that says loading facilities can't be clustered together. Let's say we have a large apartment building that needs 2 or 3 loading facilities. They need to be at separate entrances. They can't all be together. Moving on to our cooperative provisions section 17.36.060. We had these 2 criteria in the last reading, but once again, I just rephrased these for improved readability. The first clause says that the community development director may grant a shared parking agreement or a cooperative provision so long as the use with the strictest parking requirement, that the number of parking stalls is the minimum amount of parking stalls that can be used in the parking agreement. And then that second clause right there is just basically saying 2 stalls can be used for 2 different uses so long as the peak time during that use is at a different time. So residential parking spots can also be counted for retail parking spots because retail peak use is during the day, residential peak use is at night, so long as the minimum residential parking or retail parking is still met. Any questions on the cooperative provisions? I know that was slightly confusing in the last meeting, so I wanted to make sure this flowed better.
Thank you. It was much clearer.
Okay, good. Lastly, kind of an oversight on my part in 17.36.092, subsection D. I did not put anywhere in the UVMU parking section that residential parking will be determined in the table that we've previously discussed, so I just added that one line there, covering our bases. And that is the extent of the changes this time around.
Thank you, Ashton. Do we have any questions, comments? Go ahead, Commissioner Fatisi.
So just a question on 1736.050. I know this is all pretty new on E. Why do we have a stipulation that the facilities can't be next to each other? I mean, a loading zone sounds like it makes a little bit more practical sense that it's okay if they're together. What was the rationale behind keeping them separate?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the multifamily developments where multiple loading facilities may be required, we're usually talking about several structures or one very large structure. So in the event that somebody needed to use that loading facility for moving and their apartment or their unit was located very far away from where the cluster of loading facilities is, not allowing those clusters is intended to allow that person who is moving to be closer to a loading facility. It's making sure that the apartments and the units in the residential development are all within a reasonable distance to a loading facility.
When you say, sorry,
You know,
Joe?
typically, depending on the building, the elevator, specifically if it's a freight requirement, are located near the loading facilities. Making that mandatory that they're separate might not benefit a more practical solution depending on the project. While I get the fact that dispersing could be a little bit more sensible depending on the project, to make it mandatory to say if the project is X size, they need to be split up. I think that's pushing it a little bit because it's going to be project specific. Those are just my thoughts anyway.
Point of clarification before you answer this question. So when you're talking about loading facilities, is that like for big trucks to come in and unload, loading docks? Or is it like unload parking spaces for tenants to park and unload their passengers or dump some stuff that has to go up to their unit and before they take off?
It's my understanding that it's an all-inclusive term. So loading facility could be either or, and then loading zone would be that designated parking spot where residential use is also allowed, right. Or residential parking is also allowed.
Because I see his point. I mean, load and unload for passenger cars should be spread around, but I don't see why you wouldn't want loading facility docks all in one thing, at least in the big buildings. So you got maybe 3 loading docks all into one area at the base of the building or something. But I was just trying to straighten out. So they're one and the same, load and unload zones and loading facilities, or are they two different things?
I can clarify that they're two different things, and I can also clarify that that clustering should only be applied for the loading zones, the parking spot.
Okay.
But otherwise, I was interpreting loading facility to mean both a loading dock and a loading zone.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry to hijack you there, Joe, sorry.
That's fine. I'm just saying that they shall not be clustered together. That might not be practical depending on the configuration of the project. So making that a mandatory, that it's a shall not be clustered. I think we might want to sit back on that and let whoever is deploying the project decide what the best way to handle it is. Because, you know, even elevator sizes, right? When you're loading stuff, furniture and things like that, and trust me, I have a little bit firsthand experience in it, you know, couches, whatever. All I'm saying is there might be a reason why somebody has a larger, wider elevator, more freight style, that you want to cluster that stuff. I mean, then we have the typical Amazon deliveries, UPS, FedEx, all that kind of stuff. But if we're talking about a bigger project that we're having a loading zone or whatever we want to call it, mandating that they can't be together, I'm just saying we can tweak this language that there is instances that you would want them together. I get the thing about, you know, tenants moving in and out, being closer to different sections of the building. I totally get that. However, as we move forward, depending on the size of projects that come on in, because we still have quite a bit of land that can be developed for larger projects. All I'm saying is we want to do a shall not, because the shall nots are pretty mandatory instead of giving a little bit of flexibility to the actual developer.
Does
That's pretty much it.
does paragraph D address what we're getting at there? Making sure that we've got loading facilities located near entrances?
I'm not
Yeah,
sure
but
that it
the-
does address that
I
comment
mean-
because paragraph D was intended to ensure that ADA accessible parking is the priority over loading facilities or loading zones. So my question then for the commission, all the commissioners, would you rather strike paragraph E from the proposed amendments, or would you rather clarification that that is only for loading zones, not facilities, those parking spots out in the parking lot?
Can you elaborate what did you just say?
So the intent of paragraph E here was for loading zones out in the parking lot for people moving or for mail carriers, for those those loading spots to be located near multiple entrances to a multifamily development. Whereas I understand your point, Commissioner Fatizzi. I believe you're trying to get at like a loading dock where you might have a big box truck come and unload packages.
No. It's just if we're going to have a section that this is where we want the Amazons, the UPSs, the FedExes to have the ability instead of parking in the fire lanes. That I think is the overall intention here. I get the whole thing with, you know, all I'm saying is I don't want to limit it. So let's have it both ways. It's okay if the developer says, yeah, I want it dispersed for a lot of practical reasons, but there also might be another practical reason where we want the bigger delivery trucks in one spot, okay? And also there should be the ability for tenants to load and unload, you know, and a lot of times I'm just looking at the way it works in my particular building. There's a spot right in front that's limited that nobody parks. There's 2 handicap spots in a big open area. People just pull in there temporarily to drop stuff off that's right in front of the front door. So before we do the shall nots, I just think we should consider that there are other alternatives, that you can have it both ways, really.
I would appreciate E being removed.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that fixes it. And the other option, I think, to Commissioner Fatizzi's point, if we did leave that language, then there would be, it is encouraged, or similar language like that, when, you know, when feasible for the development to spread out. And that way it would kind of leave it open to that. But yeah, striking E works fine too, so.
Yeah, striking it's one way, and like Commissioner Freiberger said you could change the wording, and you could also change loading facility to loading zone and encourage spreading the wealth instead of, I mean, if you're going to have 5 different entrances, why put all of them right in the middle and people have to walk a football field to go carry something? So I understand what you're getting at, just maybe clarify it a little bit and maybe not so strict, or strike it.
Yeah, and I agree that maybe strike or at least modify. I mean, that's one place, you know, where I'm totally on board with the developers, that they know what their tenants need, right? So if we should require them to have the loading, load unload, and the, or loading facility, whatever you want to call it, but they should be able to decide where they put that, you know, because they're going to put it where they think it's best for their tenants and the building, so going to design their building for them.
Any further conversation? So I guess we can discuss whether to strike it completely or change the wording. Do we have more discussion on that? Would it be easier just to take it out, leave it up to the developers? Okay.
That's what I would recommend.
Are we in agreement there?
In my opinion, yeah.
Okay. This isn't something we need to vote on, right? Or do we? Okay.
I am looking for a motion for a recommendation to the city
Okay.
council.
Can someone give
And
me a
your
motion
motion can
to
include,
strike E?
yes.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So if you make a motion, then strike the, okay.
So I'd like to make a
second.
motion to strike E from that.
Just a
I think it
moment.
just means that when we make,
third.
somebody makes a motion
With the
to pass this on to the city council with the exception of the,
Yes, so the motion requested tonight is to recommend that this passes to city council. So what we can do is add the provision that we strike E to that motion.
But
So
if
something
there's,
along-
if there's other changes to make before we,
Right, so that's where I was gonna say, let's go through the rest of the document,
Yeah.
make sure there's nothing else to add to that motion
Right.
before we make it.
right, but can we create a motion to remove section E from 1736.050 and that for now? Or is that all?
I would wait until the
We'd
end.
wait, okay, got it. Okay. So, we can discuss other topics now.
Yes. I have covered the extent of the changes since the last meeting, so it's up to the commissioners if we want to pull out any other excerpts.
I thought that, I missed it because I was fumbling with my computer when you were first talking, but did we go back to the original UVMU parking? We didn't add more spaces, right?
Correct. We didn't add any spaces to the UVMU minimum parking or the CBD.
Okay.
and again, I know what you're trying to do, and I think it's great, like in D, but I still, when I think of loading facilities, I think of that as being loading docks for like big trucks and stuff, and when I think of passenger load and unload, you know, like if you're in Seattle and you live in an apartment building, there's always load and unload spaces near the front door, like Joe was saying, and those were for people to just pull up and unload passengers, or pull a bunch of stuff inside the front door of the building and then park and then, you know, leave somebody with it and then take it up to their unit or whatever they were gonna do. I'm sure there are better ways to do it nowadays, but anyway, so I think wording needs to be just a little clearer on what a loading facility is versus a load and unload zone.
So I have two options then. I can add a definition to chapter 1704 for loading zone, or I can change all of the loading facilities in this subsection to be loading zones.
Whatever's easier for you.
In my mind, facility is the bigger umbrella word, which would cover a loading zone or a loading parking space. I think if you kept it, my opinion is if you kept it at loading facilities, then that allows flexibility in the code.
Yeah, so please then define that in the definitions so it's clear what that includes. 'Cause
Okay.
it's a lot of stuff, right? We're talking about cars, passenger cars unloading, the people that are in their car, their things. You've got, delivery trucks, or is this different? Is this the delivery trucks that coming in to unload their packages that are going to people? And then it could be like, furniture or construction people unloading, stuff that's being used to repair the building or remodel the building or add on to the building or whatever. So, yeah, it needs to list what those uses are, I guess, that you mean by loading facilities. But I don't mind, I have a problem with loading facility, I just didn't understand exactly what you were meaning by it.
So we can add that definition to 1704, include it as part of the motion that we're going to make tonight.
Okay, awesome.
One comment on that, or possibly a question on clarification. So when I think of loading facility, kind of to Commissioner Huggins' point, I actually think more of a commercial, like warehouse type thing where they actually have a loading dock and
right.
everything. That's not even, to my knowledge, required in residential. The only reason we're adding in the kind of larger loading space kind of for trucks is for, like, you know, people moving, Amazon drivers, whatever. So it's a bit different. I think if we define it, that'll probably clear it up enough. I just don't want it to make it sound like we're requiring a
Yeah.
full-on commercial loading. I can't see where that would really ever be practical in most multifamily development.
So to be clear then, the suggestion is to add definition for a loading
Facility.
facility. Okay, good.
Commissioner Fatizzi, I believe your hand's up.
Yeah, so let's not overcomplicate it. What we're just looking at is basically designated parking for delivery trucks. We're not looking at a dock where you bring in a 52-foot, truck on in. So the only thing I would say is maybe we'll just make those spaces a little bit wider, maybe a little bit longer. Because the delivery trucks, if you have two side by side, having an extra couple feet helps the driver get in and out and do what they're there to do, as well as residents if they're bringing in trucks. But we're not looking at facilities that you're backing on into. We're basically just looking at an area, at a project that, yeah, this is exactly where the delivery folks go, and maybe you just make them a little bit wider. Let's not really overcomplicate this. I think we're getting caught up in too much weeds here. A little bit wider spots. Let the developer figure out where the best locations are to deploy that particular designated style of parking.
So increasing the size of the loading facility would mean, according to Senate Bill 6015, we couldn't count those towards residential parking as we did with our dual use, with the residential at night and the loading during the day. So we can increase those, the size of the loading facility, but then we can't consider those loading facilities to be residential parking stalls.
I would be fine with that because they're not, right? They should be designated for loading and unloading of delivery trucks and people dropping stuff off. So I don't believe they should count. Why would we want that to count? It wouldn't. It's for a totally different use.
Yeah,
They're dual purpose.
Yeah, it was just that if we were considering them as dual purpose, so that they were loading zones by day and tenant parking by night, now we can't do that, but that's the only reason, so.
Nobody's going to police it. If somebody goes in there, I don't think anybody's going to stick a ticket on it. But if somebody comes in at 11 o'clock at night to unload to move into an apartment and somebody's in there, that's going to be somebody else's battle, not ours.
But you can't, but then you can't, it puts an extra burden on the developer because now he can't use, if you widen them, which I think is a great idea, you suddenly can't, he can't count them, so he has to build two more or one more or whatever it is. Whereas if they stay the same size, then they can be dual used and they don't have to create the other parking spaces is all, so.
Just throwing my 2 cents out there.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
If it's okay to go to a completely different section. This is something, I don't know if it's just a typo that crept in since the last go-around, because I don't remember noticing it before, but somehow in the definition in 170430, the CBD definition lists east twice, and one of those should be west. So I believe it should say, and
To the west by Puget Avenue. Fourth
Correct.
Avenue.
Yes,
Good catch, thank you.
Yeah. Is that that's the CBD definition?
correct.
Okay.
CBD core,
The CBD what?
Central Business District core. So.
Right, yeah.
yeah.
So I had the same thing, so I wanted to be in the same place while you were doing that. So under the CBD definition, it says it talked about businesses facing Metcalf, Ferry, and State. I don't have it in front of my face right now. Anyway, but it should also say businesses facing Woodward, Murdoch, and Puget, which are in that zone too.
Yes, that's included. So I'm going to quote verbatim. Central Business District core means that area bounded to the north by the Cascade Trail, to the east by Puget Avenue / 4th Avenue. I will correct that to say to the west.
Right.
To the south by the alley between State and Warner Streets, and to the east by the railroad right-of-way. So Murdoch, Woodworth, those street-facing businesses are included in that.
Right, and then your next sentence is?
Also included in the Central Business District core are property zoned Central Business District that front Metcalf Ferry, West Ferry, State, and
Yeah,
West.
that front it, and it's also ones that front Woodward and Murdoch and Puget Street. So,
Yes, so the ones on Woodworth and Murdoch, that's included in the section before that says the area bounded to the north by the Cascade Trail and to the south by Warner Street. The reason why we include Metcalf Ferry, West Ferry, State, and West State
Yeah.
is because those roads do extend past the railroad right-of-way. They extend past Puget Avenue and 4th Avenue.
okay,
So we include those main streets for the
yeah, different reasons. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 minor changes so far. Striking 17.36.050 subsection E, defining loading facility in 1704, and correcting the definitions in 17.04.030.
Yes, if you could just clarify for the definition of loading facility, it'll be 17.04.030. .030.
030. 17.04.030.
4.030.
Okay, any other comments, concerns, questions? Commissioner Sexton, you got anything to say up there?
Yeah, I'm following along.
Okay,
No additional comments.
okay. Well, if there's no further comment, we could get a motion to, let's see if I can read it here. I just got to go back to it. We're looking to make a motion to recommend that the City Council approve the proposed amendments to Title 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code with the
I have
following.
one more question
Pardon?
before we do that.
We don't have to do anything right now. I'm just trying to move along. Go ahead.
Okay, so we had testimony during the public comments on the parking requirements. So I'm still wrapping my head around the matrix, which I think is a good idea. So there was comments about the UVMU and excessive parking for ADUs. So I'm looking at our minimum residential parking and maximum residential parking. So what's actually in place? It's the minimum. Am I wrong, or can somebody explain that to me? Because I was used to reading it in a different format. So I do want to address, because parking's a big deal and it does take away from certain things. But there was testimony that said that on the one project that BYK is doing right now, that they would have required like another 20-something parking spots. So from what I see here in the matrix on UVMU, I'm looking at Studio 1.2, 1.5s. So what was the pushback on that?
So, in the previous version of the draft amendment that we looked at in January, there were parking increases for the UVMU and CBD. At the commission's recommendation, I have changed those back to the existing code. So what you're reading is the existing parking requirements.
Okay.
So I would argue that we have addressed that particular public comment.
Okay, just want to make sure. Yeah. Okay. And on the ADUs, I just see one extra parking spot per unit. I don't see 3, 4, 5, or anything like that.
Correct. There are no proposed changes to ADU parking.
So we did answer with what we've done here, what that concern was.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
One more thing, since we're in this section, but in 4 above, the A and B both are referring back to the table. Is that correct? I just wanted to make sure I was understanding. There's probably no way to kind of prevent redundancy there, or am I misunderstanding?
You're correct. They both refer back to the table. However, one says 17.36.030C and one says the table above. I can correct that to both say the table above.
Please.
Okay, that would be Commissioner Frenette, 17.36.030, subsection C4B.
EC?
C as in cat,
Yep.
4, B as in boy. And we'll be correcting 17.36.030C to say the table above.
Okay. 4 corrections that we'll bring up, but any other comments? Your cat's raising his tail. Does he want to say something? Okay, so the way it stands right now, there is 4 changes. Striking subsection E out of 17.36.050, which is the mandatory non-clustering of loading zones. Defining loading facility in 17.04.030. Correcting the CBD definition in 17.04.030. And on table, or on 17.36.030 subsection C, the table above.
Subsection C4B.
C4B. Okay. Changing the wording to the table above. Now, can we get a motion to, we'll go back to that section now. All the way back to the beginning. to make a motion to recommend that the City Council approve the proposed amendments to Title 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code.
I'll make that motion with those stated changes.
Commissioner Freiberger makes a motion to send this along to City Council for approval, and do I have a second?
Second.
I second.
Commissioner Jasper, we'll take Jasper at 7:18. All those in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. All those that's approved, that will pass it along.
Good
At
job.
7:19.
I noticed when I watch YouTube videos that if the cats know that there's a camera and if their owner is talking to the camera, they'll run
Next up,
in front of the camera and attention getters.
lost my note. Unfinished business. Proposed amendments to Chapter 2.90 and Title 17 Sedro-Woolley Municipal Code to add regulations for cottage clusters.
Okay. At our last meeting on January 21st, we reviewed the revised cottage cluster regulations. Overall, the Planning Commission was supportive of the changes. There was particular interest in the new sections on unit lot subdivision and affordability provisions. So we did get a couple of concerns that have since been addressed since the last version that you saw. So the first was the issue with the last sentence of the unit lot subdivision. That would have allowed things like decks, fences, garages, and other accessory structures to encroach on the neighboring properties or into common areas. So based on that feedback, I did strike that sentence. The other concern was about the exemption of school impact fees for cottage clusters that are designated as permanently affordable. So the worry was that waiving those fees would create a funding gap for the school system. So in response, instead of exempting school impact fees, I've switched the draft to exempt traffic impact fees instead. The reasoning behind that is that the cottage clusters are typically compact and walkable, and they're already typically in areas serviced by roads, sidewalks, transit. So because these cottage clusters tend to generate fewer vehicle trips compared to traditional single-family homes, they'll mostly rely on private roads maintained by the HOA or the property owners. So they won't significantly increase the demand for new public road infrastructure. So since traffic impact fees are meant to fund roadway expansions and improvements, it makes sense to provide an exemption where the public burden is pretty minimal. So that said, we do understand that this is a new code and there's always the risk for long-term impacts that are unforeseen. So I will be making sure to track the traffic patterns and infrastructure needs as these projects develop. And if any issues arise, then we can always adjust these affordability provisions in the future if we need to do so. One additional change that I've made is expanding the plan review fee exemption for cottage clusters that are 100% affordable. Previously written, only the projects reserving 50% of their units as affordable qualified for the plan review fee exemption. So it made sense to extend it as an added incentive for affordability commitment. And then to help illustrate the financial side of things, I did include a fee study in your packet, and it shows permitting costs for different types of development, all on a half-acre R15 zoned parcel. So just as a quick summary for that, under the current density rules, a half-acre in the R15 zone allows for up to 7 multifamily apartment units or up to 12 cottages. Because each cottage is 750 square feet, the impact fees and the sewer connection charges are assessed at 50% of the standard single-family rate. So I'd love to talk through these updates. The hope is that after discussion tonight, we might be able to move forward to a public hearing at the next meeting. Open to any questions.
Thank you, Nicole. You want to address any part of this?
I might be a little bit out of order here because I have notes from two different iterations of this, but 17-120-50C, I think it just needs a word change, and let me get back there. Minimum and maximum number of cottages. Since this section is called cottage housing, but we allow multiple housing types in there, I think it might be better to say minimum and maximum number of dwelling units or something along those lines, to be kind of consistent with how we've been referring them even in B, right up above.
If the other commissioners are on board with that change, I can make that change.
Of course, then each one of those 1, 2, and 3 also references cottages. So if we're just referring to it kind of generally, the term, then I suppose that's fine. It's just that we do define up in the definitions that you can have a cottage, you can have a park model, and you can have a tiny home. And so it just seemed a little bit ambiguous there. But if that's not confusing to anybody else, it might be simpler to leave it.
Say it again, what's confusing?
So
I see the point.
17-120-50C.
120. Oh, okay, 12050
Correct. Number C.
development standards.
Yeah. It's just in B, we talk about dwelling units and kind of are more general, but then we go in C and say minimum, maximum number of cottages, and then say cottage, that whole, it's like we're defining it as cottages, even though they can be multiple housing types. So it seemed clear to me to say dwelling units, but maybe that's being pedantic.
I definitely see the point, and when I've gone in 1704 and I've added definitions specifically for what is a tiny home, what is a park model, and what is a cottage home, and they're all very different things. So by saying the minimum and maximum number of cottages specifically, that could be confusing to someone reading this. So I'd be happy to make those changes. I think anywhere where it where the code says, I guess I'm struggling with that because there's other sections where it's like, down in subsection D, it says, cottages must be set back at least 5 feet, et cetera. There's several other places where that comes up where it might be a little bit difficult to make that distinguish.
So perhaps it's just kind of assumed that we're generally referring, since this is cottage cluster, that we're referring to all of those housing types as cottages. That's fine. I just kind of wanted to see if there was anybody else found that confusing, but yeah.
Oh, we got a hand up.
Commissioner Fatisi?
Of course.
So
Go ahead.
back to Commissioner Freiberger's comments. So in B, where we're talking about the density in the term of dwelling units, right? So it should at least be consistent between B and C. Cottages are a dwelling unit. So using the same language throughout the standards, I think is definitely more readable, because we go from B talking dwelling units, and then we go down to C, now they're cottages. They're one and the same. So let's pick a term, I guess, for consistency's sake. But yeah, they are dwelling units technically. Smaller, different design guidelines, all of it. So consistency throughout the code, I think is important. Thank you.
Can I ask a point for clarification? Any time where the term cottage cluster comes up, would it be okay to keep that term and then just specify when we're talking about individual units, just call it a dwelling unit? Is that what we're thinking?
I'm okay with that myself, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, right, we're talking cottage clusters, right? So all of a sudden, it's a dwelling unit that is a cottage, now clustered with different density requirements, I get that. We're kind of splitting hairs here, but we kind of need to. I get it.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe it could be clarified a little bit in the definitions. Cottage clusters mean tiny homes, park models. Would that help?
Dwelling units, yeah.
That's ownership.
AKA known as, yeah.
So in 17.120.030, the permitted uses section, I do say the following uses are allowed in cottage clusters and go down the list. Cottage homes, tiny homes, and park models, and each are defined, and they're redirected to 1704 for those definitions. I think that covers it.
I think that
agree.
covers, yeah. The cottage clusters are these A, B, and C types, yeah.
And if you don't already, I can't remember if I've seen it a gazillion times, but never in the definitions. So you could just say that unit means, dwelling unit means whatever we're talking about in that section or something like that, so that if you do go interchangeably, it's not confusing. You know that they're referring to whichever of the ones, tiny home or a small home or a cottage cluster. That's the section you're in. So unit is one of those.
As like a note in the development standard sort of thing, for the purposes of this section, dwelling unit means this, or
I meant it like in the definition.
as a definition in
that-
1704?
Yeah, that a definition that the dwelling unit means whatever you're talking about in the paragraph or section, code section that that you're in. So.
Okay.
That's how I read them when I read through. If I see them used interchangeably, I just assume that they're talking about a cottage cluster. It's a tenant unit or a dwelling unit is a cottage cluster, or if it's whatever.
Do you have a definition of park model anywhere?
I do. It's in.
Because I looked it up today and it's slightly different than what I'm reading.
Just a moment, let me find it. Okay. So this is in 1704.030 definitions. Park model means a dwelling that is no larger than 400 square feet, built to American National Standards Institute, or ANSI, 119.5 specifications. For the purposes of Chapter 17.120, that's the cottage clusters chapter, park models are mounted on a foundation for permanent installation and are used as a primary residence and include a kitchen, bathroom, and sleeping area.
Okay.
Sleeping /
Does it
living
say
area.
anything about wheels on or off? It doesn't matter.
No. I think the mounted on a permanent foundation kind of gets at the don't keep the wheels
Okay,
on
so the wheels are gone?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they usually cut them off and then tie them to the foundation, and then you can weld them back on if you have to move it. So.
Okay, well, I noticed in, not splitting hairs here, but 17.120.070, when they're talking about affordability, let's see here. 070. Now I have to find it. Okay, there it is. A, subsection A1, says dwelling units less than 400 square feet in size will be assessed at 30% of the standard single-family residential unit rate. You have that?
I got it.
Okay, well, when I was reading about park models today, it said the official description of a park model is less than 400 square feet. And if you said no more, if it's written somewhere that it's no more than 400 square feet, anyway, I think we should define if a park model has to be less than 400 square feet, and it says it here, should it also be in the definition of park model? I mean, you use the word less than 400 square feet. And the definition of a park model is less than 400 square feet. Or maybe it doesn't matter, but I thought I'd bring it up. Only in the state of Florida can a park model be bigger than 400 square feet.
Yeah, so the park model definition does specify they are no larger than 400 square feet. The tiny home definition specifies that those are a minimum of 205 square feet and no larger than 400. So in the provisions for affordability, that's what that
Okay.
subsection A1 is talking about, specifically the park models and tiny homes.
Okay, so a park model would be assessed at 30%?
Yes.
Okay. It also said they're not eligible to be lived in permanently, but I guess we ignore that part, right?
I was reading the ANSI code with our building inspector, and that has changed.
Has it?
Yes,
Okay.
they removed, it used to be the park models were specifically recreational vehicles, period, not intended for permanent residency, which that has changed. It's allowed for permanent residency now in the
Okay.
code.
So they're built a little better now, huh?
Yeah, and I think that change was made as part of the change from the 2018 to the 2021 building code.
Okay,
Don't quote me on that.
good information. Nicole says,
While we're on the subject of building code, I actually had a question on, sorry to beat this one, but back in 17-120-50D, just the separation there was 5 feet, and I was thinking for some reason that it's 6 feet by building code, but I might be wrong. It might be just a jurisdiction-specific thing. But I was wondering if anybody had, where that number came from.
The 5 feet,
Correct.
it comes from the fire code.
Okay.
Fire department
Okay.
says they need 5 feet from the property line so they can get a truck or.
Okay.
however, in here it says 10 feet.
10 feet between houses, but 5 foot setback for each house from the property line.
I expected to see 5-foot setback, but I could have swore I read 10-foot setback.
Yeah, where you saw the 10-foot setback, that's the spacing between structures, just so that they're not packed in like sardines.
Okay, I thought it was the property line. I was going to bring that
Yeah,
up.
5 feet to the property line, 10 feet between structures.
Yeah, and I think that is different in different places. Another thing that we could do someday when we just got all kinds of time is.
Sorry to interrupt, commissioners, but can you turn on your mic, please?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, that's one of the things we could clean up someday when we just have nothing else to do, and because it does say it both ways in different places, so.
Right. Certainly something we could take for a test drive.
Yeah, that was tongue-in-cheek, the whole when we have time, yeah.
Also in section F, do we define native vegetation? Or is that just kind of assumed everywhere in the code where we use that?
We don't currently, but I will mention the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Ecology have requested some amendments to our regulations for critical areas, which will define native vegetation. And I do intend on updating our landscaping chapter at that point too, once those changes are made. Those are due in June of 2025, roughly, so coming soon.
Is it?
I have another comment unless you do.
No, go ahead.
Okay, if we can go to 17.120.050, development standards. Starts off with lot size and then density and then minimum and maximum number of cottages. Oh yeah, we've already been here. Okay, D, minimum setbacks and separation. Setbacks and separations for all cottage cluster structures within all the zones. 1, front setback to any public street, 20 feet. We'll get back to that one in a minute. Number 2, side setback to property line, 10 feet. That's where I got thrown off.
Yeah. No, you're right. It was for those zones. It's the CBD, or not the CBD, the PRDs, the planned residential developments. That's where we had the 5-foot setback for each property and 10 minimum, because the fire department said no, 10 feet, have to have 10 feet between units, so, yeah.
Okay, so I read to property line. Should it say between dwellings? Or what am I missing? Because I expected that to say 5 feet, but you're saying now it's 10.
No, it was, in those zones, it was always, yeah, I'm sorry, I messed you up. In those zones, in 5, 7, and 15, when we built those, it was a 10-foot setback. Then when we started talking about PRDs, it went, we set up, like, I think the ones down on Jameson Street and some others, that we wrote it so that they could do the minimum that the fire department would allow, which was 10 feet, and that was 5 feet for each house from its property line.
To drive a truck between houses?
Yeah, or get a crew between it or whatever, yeah, so.
And if there's a fence between the houses,
That's what they wanted.
they don't go there?
5 feet, yeah.
So I guess my question is this worded correctly? Side setbacks to property line is 10 feet?
That's what it's always been,
What
or
it's
at least
always
been
been.
in since the
Okay.
early 2000s.
And that's how we want this to be?
So that's a good question. I think from the examples that I've seen of other cottage housing regulations, with the kind of compact nature of this sort of development, most have tended to kind of increase the distance from the property line, just to kind of combat that real compact feel. So that is something I'm happy to change. Our typical setback regulations in these zones for side setback is 5 feet to the side property line. Unless you're 2 stories, then it goes to 8 feet. And then each story beyond the second story, then you're adding, 4 feet to your setback.
Okay, is that written in here?
No, so those setback provisions are in the R5, R7, and R15 zoning codes. So I'm happy to change that to 5 feet. Just kind of when I did the rewrite based off of Anacortes code, they did include a 10-foot side setback to kind of combat that compact nature, to increase the amount of landscaping available for the
Yeah, I think they were wording it as 10 feet between structures.
Yeah, and that is, if you see in D7, there's minimum separation between structures is 10 feet there.
Including,
Just a
okay,
quick
when I
comment
read
on
including accessory dwelling structures, I thought to myself that only means accessory dwelling structures because they can be 5 feet to the property line. So I thought that was a typo or something.
So I have to say then that still confuses me then, because it says 10 feet in that line there, but then in Oh, never
So
mind.
when you're, yeah.
Yeah, 8 is actually talking specifically about protrusions. It's not talking about separation between buildings. I misread that, so.
Right. Yeah, I think the confusion, part of the confusion also is that if you're just building a standard subdivision in a R5, R7, R15, then it's a 10-foot setback. But now we're talking about these small, the tiny home cottage clusters, and so we can make it whatever we want. We can keep it at 10 feet, or we can change it to whatever we want as we're developing this thing. That's what we did with the PRD. Was I think, I hope I'm not wrong that they haven't changed it. But what we proposed to the city was that it was 5 foot to the fence for the PRDs, because we were trying to allow them to have more density in exchange for better planning. Was the thought process, and then that's where the city in the PRDs said that we couldn't go any less than we either had to go 0 lot line with the common wall, firewall, or you had to go 10 feet between units, 5 feet from the
property lines.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but just in the PRDs. So yeah, we can do what we want here while we're still writing it.
Well, I was using that matrix that you made for us, and I kind of doodled a picture here, and it was impossible to put 12 units on a half acre, not even close, using those setbacks. So reducing the side setbacks to 5 will help, but still, you can't get 12 units on a half acre. Not even close. So either we have to start reducing things, and also the landscaping. Anyway, that's another subject. 20% of the area has to be landscaping. That doesn't leave anything for.
Yeah, I don't
walkways
want to dwell too much on the site size at this
Okay.
point. I was more doing so just for easy numbers.
Right, okay.
But because we took away that minimum site size requirement, it's like 3 to 12 cottages. That's what a cottage cluster is, right? So it's not dependent on the site size at this point. If we want to make adjustments to the setback regulations, that's fine. I'd like to discuss that. Just I want to keep in mind, open space is going to be big for these things. So reductions we should be careful about doing with the setbacks.
Okay. Oh, we have a hand. Commissioner Fatizzi. Thank you. Oh, 2 hands.
So let's, talking about side setbacks and trying to get in density, visualize what that end product's gonna look like. Okay, if you have an eave that's 2 feet, 5 feet Danielle is further from you where you're sitting right now than 5 feet. So all I'm saying is visualize what you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day. I get we can put 15 pounds of potatoes in the 5-pound bag. Visualize at the end of the day what these projects are going to look like. 10 feet isn't a whole heck of a lot. Yeah, maybe reducing it a little bit, but visualize exactly what that's going to look like with a deployed project when you have eaves. 5 feet I'm 5'7", and I am not a tall man by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that 5 feet is where you're sitting right now to maybe that seat in between you and Commissioner Freiberger. So all I'm saying is when we're doing this code, visualize what the end product is going to look like and what the community values as far as how we're going to grow. I get we can mess with the setbacks and get more density on end, but visualize the end product at the end of the day. 5 feet is nothing. So 10 feet, even that isn't much. So that's just my aesthetic kind of commentary on this. This is important stuff. Once that stuff goes in, it's not going to move.
I totally.
Commissioner DeVoyne has his hand up as well.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I totally agree with you. When we were doing the PRDs and we went to the 5 foot, I said, why don't we just go to a common wall and make them duplexes and have more space between the two basically duplex units, and because nothing will even grow in the space between if it at 10 feet, you can't even get anything to grow in there. It's gonna get filled full of storage stuff that'll burn anyway, so.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not advocating for 5-foot setbacks. I just wanted everything to, be the same. And if we're trying to squeeze things in like sardines, it's got to be a lot less than that. But heck, I'd go 15, 20 feet between houses. But anyway, sorry, Commissioner DeVoynes, do you have something?
I'm not advocating for the 5 feet, but I will say that we drove by where Kelly Park wants to build the cottages. I looked at that area and the number of cottages that they want to build in that small area. It's really hard to build though within 10-foot setback. Just my thought.
I agree. It's hard to achieve what we're trying to achieve if we're given elbow room everywhere. I prefer elbow room, but other people are saying pack them in. So what's it going to be?
No, I totally agree. I mean, we can do it. We'll pay for it later, but we can pack them in and get people in a unit.
As long as we're all in agreement here.
Well, something that occurred to me is that if you take away that 10-foot or between the property line, and you still have the eaves being allowed to encroach up to, what was it, 5, so that there's only 5 feet separation. If you reduce that down to 5 feet, you could have maybe 2 or 3 feet of total separation between you and your neighbor's eaves. That makes it very, very close.
Yeah.
So if we did, for some reason, reduce it, which I'm also not advocating for necessarily, we might want to relook at allowing encroachments that would further reduce it
That's a
down.
good point, that fire can spread from eave to eave.
You took the words out of my mouth. Yeah, well, after the last month, do we want houses 3 feet apart with the, yeah, because then you'd have to go to whole different construction materials, which are going to make them just as unaffordable as if they were on bigger lots spread apart. I don't see packing it in as a way to solve many of our problems, but that's what people choose to go to because it makes quick logical sense, but when you start looking at the details, it's you're not really solving any problems. You're just creating new, bigger problems.
Side note here, I've been a boat builder for 40 years, and we've had customers that wanted a 55-foot boat, but they wanted everything in it like a 100-foot boat, and it was uncomfortable for us and uncomfortable for them, and it made a lousy product at the end. And sometimes I get reminiscent of that here. I don't know what to do. And hopefully there's solutions. We want to move this along, but what are we trying to achieve, I guess? I almost want to do a model cottage cluster and see what it looks like. Because I don't even know what the front and the back of the house is. It says a 20-foot setback from the public road. And then we have to face the open space. Is the end facing the open space the front of the house, or is that the back of the house if it has to face the open space? And would that be 20 feet on that side and then 10 feet on the other side that's facing the road? So I get confused. I'm sorry.
Well, to answer that question, if you've been to Brickyard Park, they did this out there. The open space, they do have homes essentially fronting on the open space, so it does have the rear of the house is treated as if it was a front facade, right? So it doesn't have the garage door or the main front entry, but it's still got the windows and big entry door sort of thing. So it looks as if you're looking at the front of the house when you're standing in the open space area, but it's still the back of the house. So it does have 2 fronts technically. As far as the setbacks go, yeah, you'll still have your 20-foot front setback to the street, and then.
Okay, and then it says public street.
Mm-hmm.
But you were saying that these can be private roads. Mm-hmm. So does that mean public and private roads, or is that only public roads?
So there's separate provisions if you're accessing off of a private drive. So you're required a minimum 10 feet from any internal access drive. I'm thinking of, in the event that this is a corner lot that someone's going to do this and you've got two public street fronted accesses, we want to make sure that they're going to maybe take the alley, and establish an internal drive as opposed to putting multiple access points on those public streets where they'll be interfering with that intersection and that sort of thing. So try to consolidate everything internally if we can. Anyway.
And, sorry, I was just going to say that, also remember that one of the things I've learned being on the planning commission is that when you get something 98% of the way there, which I think this is, sometimes it's better just to, if you can all agree on it, to just pass it the way it is and then let it go through planning for a year. They can always put a moratorium. If something is really going to blow up, city council will put a moratorium on it. If it doesn't blow up, you learn something in a year or whatever it takes to get a project built, and then you can refine those.
I appreciate that reminder, and BYK brought it up too. Let's just, maybe no one's even going to do this. Just get it out there and see what happens. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the reminder, and I'm not trying to split hairs. I just want to make sure we're all seeing the same picture.
Yeah, and I'm not picking on you, Joe. I'm just
I know.
looking at you because you are chairman of the committee, and we speak to the
take it.
president, so.
I'll take it. No, we can pass it as is. I just want to make sure we all have a chance to make sure we think we know what we can pretend like we know what we're doing.
I want to thank Commissioner Freiberger for reminding me about the side setback issue with the overhang, the eaves encroaching into setbacks. I have run into that before in my past. I think that is I've seen where that happens, where the walls of the buildings meet the setback when the eaves do not, and then that creates, well, it wasn't a fire issue, but it was a neighbor issue, and yeah, I think I like to play it safe on these things and take kind of a conservative approach. I think we're if I could advocate, I think we're meeting that need to address density, provide that, but while also making it, a safe standard for development.
Sure.
My 2 cents.
So I'm happy to leave that wording just as it is, 10 feet to the property line. That's 20 feet between buildings. So if that's what we meant to do, great.
So going down to I, number 3 and 4, this is still in, I guess, under 12050.
Parking?
Correct. So number 3 says that, let's see here. Parking must not be located between the public right-of-way and cottages, nor between cottages and common open space. So I take it to say just what it does, but then you go down to 4, and it says, that last sentence, garages and carports located adjacent to common open space shall be screened or incorporate architectural treatment. So am I just envisioning it wrong where they can be adjacent, but they can't be in between the house and the common open space? Or is this an actual contradiction between 3 and 4?
Your first statement is correct. So you can have parking adjacent to the common open space, so long as it's not between, because we want to encourage that interaction with the open space between the cottage and the open space.
Okay.
Any other comments? on
Is
cottage?
Danielle done? Yeah. Did you have more? Or?
I do, but
No,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm doing all the talking, so.
no,
Just a real quick one in 17-120-40, paragraph 2. And if we can just put chapter 2.90 SWMC, it just doesn't state code, and I believe we do that everywhere else where we actually reference that, so.
Easy change, thank you. I'll do a check through and make sure I haven't missed that elsewhere too. But.
And then I don't want to open a can of worms here, but I did have to ask, in the 17-120-50I, the parking, does it make sense to keep it here and not put this in with all the other parking in the chapter that we've just approved? I was trying to figure out if we have parking for specific situations like this where it is in the individual codes, like for subdivisions, and I was having a hard time finding that, so.
I think I would struggle fitting this into our table. I personally would keep it here.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know, Ashton, how do you feel? Should it go in your table?
Can't you put them in both? I mean, it's no big deal updating the table with what's in the code. I
So
mean, this is just an inclusion of what's already there, right?
I have two comments. I wouldn't recommend putting it in two different locations because we ran into that discrepancy issue with the street trees code.
Yeah.
I'm going to contradict Nicole here, and I would recommend putting it in the table, but keeping these access requirements in the cottage cluster code. So basically only taking that I-1 and putting it in the table and keeping everything
Yeah,
else.
put parking in parking if we're gonna use that matrix as the predominant determination of parking. It just makes a lot more sense to keep all parking in that matrix, because that was a good change, by the way. So keeping parking in parking, so we're not confused by parking in other places, might be a good idea.
Might I suggest we pass it as is, and then under a future update, then I can wiggle it into that, since we just made a motion, and we're not quite there yet with this. I'm just a little hung up on the timing of that. How would I make that work?
Did you catch that, Commissioner Fatisi?
Yeah, there wasn't a motion made.
Yeah.
It's just a suggestion, because we're not at any section right now. I mean, we're just trying to get ready for a public hearing. So keeping it where it's at, I mean, I'm fine with it. But at some point, if we're going to use the matrix as the predominant guide for anyone as far as parking goes, burying another parking condition within the code when we've already taken all the parking requirements out of all the existing code and moving it up into the matrix just seems sensible to me to keep all that in one spot. You're right, access is fine. But Nicole, what would be the big deal moving that up into the matrix for that parking?
It's not a big deal. It's just a timing thing, really. So what I would like to do moving forward is wait until Ashton's parking code does pass council, and it makes it into the code. And then,
Oh, that makes sense. No, because this isn't even in, you're right. No,
yeah,
that's fine.
and
Okay.
then I will
see where you're
make
going
that,
with that. No, that's a valid point. You're right, sure.
yeah,
I get it.
I'll make that adjustment. I'll take note of it, make that adjustment, add it to
Yeah.
Ashton's
That's a good reason.
table
Absolutely.
after the fact.
I get
Because
it.
you'd have to go through the city council to make a change to something that existed already, but you should be able to add new things at any time if we need them. Is that correct? Or is it only during comp plan that we can?
That's correct. I just hesitate to make any adjustments until council
Yeah.
has made their recommendations, edits, et cetera.
Okay.
It's hard to keep track of both at the same time.
Yeah, we think our world's complicated and you have to juggle both the council and the commission. So.
Besides, parking could be thrown out the window in a month from now, right?
Exactly.
So, any other great comments? Oh,
Well, I was waiting, I want to make sure Danielle was, got
Well-
through all of her stuff. So.
No, you go first.
He's yielded the floor to you.
Yeah. Okay, well, seems silly now. I was just going to say that, first, I wanted to thank you guys for all the hard work you've done on this so far. I mean, it's been a lot, and I love the way you handled the not school board, or not school fee, but changing it over. That makes real sense to me. And my things that I'm better at are visioning and big picture, and I really appreciate all of you guys who are really good at going, crossing the T's and dotting the I's, which is equally important. And so anyway, I don't have any specific changes, but I just wanted to say that as my part of the contribution. So for this, yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Pat.
If we do offer this up for a motion, are we making some definite changes before we offer it? I've heard some suggestions, but
So there is no motion tonight, just I would like direction from
Right, I
Planning
mean,
Commission to move
to
forward
move
with
on to
the
a public
public hearing at the next meeting.
hearing, okay. So is there anything that we want to change before we offer it to a public hearing, if we choose to offer it to a public hearing?
So you've been taking notes, right? So you've got your notes.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna go in the order of which my pages turn. So in 17-120-040, to add SWMC to Chapter 290 in the second paragraph. In 17-120-050, development standards, to replace cottage with dwelling unit anytime that comes up. And I've got a note to add the parking to Ashton's table in the future. That's it. But with those changes, I'll make those, and then at the next meeting, hopefully get to public hearing. If y'all are okay with that?
It's fine with me. Is that something that we have to get a motion for to do a public hearing, or we just say yes?
Say yes.
The consensus of the group. Yeah.
I think it's just say yes.
Can I bring up two more things? I do
Yeah.
believe, I'm totally on board with it going to public hearing. Just wanted to mention a couple of things now instead of next time, so that it can be in as final a form as we can have it. I noticed that 17-120-50L, the separation requirement, that was a public comment from BYK about the separation. And there is wording in there about there is some discretion on the part of the director on possibly allowing more than one cottage cluster. So perhaps that satisfies that. I just kind of wanted to bring it up, since I don't know that we had discussed that since we received that comment last time.
So the way that this restriction is written, you do have to meet both of those conditions. So there has to be some kind of barrier, river, significant topographical feature like the railroad grade, something like that. And the director determines that there's not too much clustering happening.
Okay, so it's not either or, okay.
I have a question. What do we call the clubhouse now? I can't remember. Is it a clubhouse?
Shared community building.
Okay. Is that a requirement after so many units, or is it not a non-requirement? That's just an option?
I think it was required after.
Not required.
Okay, 'cause I thought at one time if you had so many units, you had to have one, but I couldn't find that. The shared community building.
No, it's just an optional thing people can add in the common open space area.
Shared community building may be integrated.
Okay. Anyone else?
And then in N4 and 5, I just wanted to, two things. N, so it's 17, 120, 50, N, then number 4 and number 5. Number 1, it doesn't, well, unless I am wrong here, we haven't defined the ADU having a smaller size, so we're just leaving it the default ADU size, so you could have an ADU attached to the shared building that is up to whatever our maximum is, so it could be significantly larger than any of the other cottage structures, and that's fine. That's intentional.
So if you read subsection 3, it does say that the ADU is, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, see chapter 17-100. So it's
Correct.
expected
Okay.
that the
Okay.
ADU would be
Okay.
developed according to
Okay.
those standards. With the ADU update, if council approves it, it will increase our maximum ADU size from 800 to 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be increased beyond the size of what we would allow in the cottage clusters, right?
You're right,
So-
because we're allowing up to
1,200
1,200.
square feet.
Okay, okay. Then, yeah, I didn't know if maybe we needed to define it, but it sounds like it's taken care of there. And then, in both 4 and 5, shared community buildings, I believe there should be a shall in there, shall have, or should have, and same on 5.
The roof form?
Good.
Easy change, thank you.
And then just a comment on the 17-1-20-60, that, thank you for taking that confusing, or the language out that I got stuck on last time. But I did want to mention, I was talking to one of our planners in Mount Vernon about the possibility of subdividing a cottage cluster, and I guess Burlington has residential small lots, which I wasn't familiar with, and I don't know, we're obviously not getting into that sort of thing, we're just kind of leaving this possibility in here, but I was thinking, I don't know if that would tie in maybe down the road, because we don't really get into how big these individual lots would be, and maybe that wouldn't even really work, but we were just kind of talking about setback encroachment and not wanting buildings on other properties, but how can you kind of reduce as much as possible when you're trying to subdivide an already pretty small community, and zero lot line, of course, being a thing. So I just took a quick glance at it, and I'm sure you're more familiar with those things. I just thought it was interesting, and because I was thinking, well, this is making obviously much smaller lots, I presume, since the whole scale is smaller for a cottage cluster. So,
You said they called it residential small lots?
correct. It's in Burlington Municipal Code 1715-110.
I'm actually not familiar with that,
And
so
they-
I'd love to look into that and see how flexible
Yeah.
those kind of regulations
it-
are.
And they actually have adopted cottage cluster, I believe, as well. So it might not really translate across, but I thought it was possibly something worth looking into in the future. And then my last comment is in, if I can find it, yes, in B, right below that, 17-120-60B. The first part of that says that shall be owned in common by the owners of the individual lots within the subdivision or by a homeowners association. So how I'm reading that is it can be either or, but then it's not clear to me in the subsequent sentence there if they still have to have basically the CC&Rs and stuff either way, and how would you do that without an HOA? I guess I'm more familiar with an HOA having the binding documents. So just wanted to make sure that's clear, that whether or not you have an HOA, you still have to have recorded restricted documents.
Yeah, so it's always a good idea to have conditions, restrictions, maintenance agreements, that sort of thing. I have seen subdivisions where an HOA is not required, but they still have recorded maintenance agreements.
Okay.
So that would be something that we would require, that at least a maintenance agreement be recorded over the binding with the land. It is rare.
Okay.
Commissioner Fatisi.
Back to 120-050L, number 1. So why don't we just put the developments are separated by a natural barrier? The city doesn't, we border the river. The river doesn't flow through the town, so to speak. We got creeks, other natural barriers. So why don't we just pull out, such as a river, just put by a natural barrier or significant topographical feature. Like I said, we border the Skagit River. There's no rivers in the city. We got creeks, we got other natural barriers. I'm just saying, let's just pull out such as a river. Just put by a natural barrier. It'll be determined on whatever the project is. I'm just trying to be correct in my geography.
I'm okay with that.
That's all I have. Good job.
Okay. Well, we should, it's 8:15. We should, if there's no further comments, if we're all in agreement, this can go to a hearing, public hearing.
Yeah, I'm on with the.
Are you
public
on with
hearing
that?
for it, yeah.
Absolutely.
Everyone's on with that? I got a
Joe,
thumbs up from Commissioner Fatisi. Okay, so if there's no objections, let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lot of work. We were picking lots of holes in it, but I think it's going to be okay.
Holes are good, sort of thing.
So it's 8:16, and we have one more item on unfinished business, and that's the draft vision statement for the 2025 comprehensive plan update.
Okay, great, thank you. At our joint meeting with the City Council, we presented draft vision statements that our consulting team had put together based on the survey responses that they had and comments they received at the open houses. And they listed out 2 or 3. Was it, how many? Yeah, 3. And council read through and with our planning commissioners who were there, and it seemed to be that everyone was in agreement that option 1 would be the one most likely to capture their idea of the city. But we also had a city council person comment that she felt that there was still something missing with that. And council then said, well, go ahead and write something up and get it back to us. And so we did, and that's included here in the attachments. So in the memo here, you have the information, these vision statements that were presented. And then in terms of attachments, you have the modified vision statements. And, excuse me, and then on the back, you've got the notes from that meeting, which contains the follow-up email from Councilmember Kesty. So our consultant team took her statement and the option one and went back to their lab and cooked up the vision statements that you see here. Now, where I'm a little bit confused, and maybe Nicole, you can help me out here, but it says at the end of the memo, Tom will send other follow-up comments from, I think she meant the council, and Facet will provide 2 new drafts to review. So on the attachment, there's 3 paragraphs. Are the second and the third paragraph 2 different vision statements, or is this whole thing considered one? And because when I read through it, it's a little bit duplicative, and that made me think maybe there's two different statements in there.
Yes, so the meeting notes that she had put together were from before we'd gotten the chance to meet with our consultant team and try to consolidate our process a little bit to get the vision statement approved more quickly, because June 2025 is coming up very quickly.
Yes, that's right.
So we're hoping to get the Planning Commission's kind of final feedback tonight on this version of the vision statement. We will take that feedback to the council in the hopes of getting an approval at the next council meeting on the vision statement.
And so what we're asking Planning Commission to do here is to choose one of these 2 paragraphs. I asked because I wasn't in that meeting, in that discussion with Donna today.
So attachment 1 is the vision statement. So any feedback that you have
The entire thing.
on the entire thing.
Okay.
So for clarification, we're looking at page 3, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is it entitled Agenda Item Number 2, G2?
It
February
is,
18th?
yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so it's recommended action, issue, and then background summary, that's one? Yeah. Okay, that's just down here. Oh, that one, okay. This one?
Okay, so at the top of that page, it says draft comprehensive plan vision
The plan
statement,
vision, okay,
February
got it.
13th, 2025.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, yep.
Thank you. I thought I saw a hand up, but I have one quick statement.
Yeah.
It starts off with 2046. Is that a necessity?
Yeah, because we're looking at the 20-year plan. And actually, and we could change that to 2045, but it'll probably be mid-25 when we get this adopted. So we set that date for 20 years out from 2026.
So we don't adopt this for another 20 years?
No, this is our vision statement for how we see the community in 20 years.
Oh, I see.
So it's written from the perspective of what you would see in the year 2046 for Sedro-Woolley.
But it gets updated every 7 years.
Oh.
To answer your question, yeah.
Yeah.
I think my concern, we looked at during our workshop, or I can't remember what you call it, charrette, we talked about other vision statements for cities. I don't recall any of them being this extensive, 3 robust, active voice paragraphs.
Oh.
So I just have questions about that.
Okay.
I don't see really any of the feedback that we've provided in the workshop integrated into this statement. I personally don't care for it sounding like, looking off into the future with the date, but that's just my personal opinion. Joe still got his hand up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that-
go ahead.
I'm just back on page 1, looking at option 2 and specifically. One thing we're not a gateway to the Puget Sound. We're in the North Cascades. This is the Skagit Valley, Skagit River. Puget Sound is to the east and to the south. I think we're more Salish Sea-ish than we are Puget Sound. So when I saw it, it sounds so generalized, like it was written for Seattle or somebody else on that. But there's snippets and pieces that, yeah, you want to put together. Yeah. Spending a lot of time on this, yeah, I made that comment during the council commission meeting. This is great, but we have a lot more important things to do. And I realize it's important. I'm not disrespecting it. I'm just saying that the real meat that's on the bones is yet to come. So that everybody has just different views on different things, and they're all very well thought out. But I guess we have to come up with something.
So the way we're looking at this is this this attachment that we have here, where it says draft comprehensive plan vision statement. How I understand this is that we've moved beyond options 1, 2, and 3 to now
Right.
looking at this one.
Yep.
And to read through it, and if there's things you want to tweak about it, fix, edit, add, that's, what we're asking you.
So who, I wasn't at the joint meeting, so this was something that this was decided at that meeting, that we were going with this version and not a different one.
No, it wasn't decided that we're going with this version. What they said is that they liked option 1 the best, but we're in agreement that the comments that were brought up by one of the council member about the feel of it was missing, is now added into this statement.
I see, yeah.
There were a lot of things I didn't, I apologize for not being there last week. I'm going to start looking at my iPad a lot more. Anyway, so I feel like I can't make comments here, but when I read through all these, there was a lot of things about option 1, 2, and 3 I didn't like. Funny wording and words I didn't like. And so the comprehensive plan vision statement that your group put together, I thought was great, a lot better. But I think my favorite was Commissioner Sexton's one that she wrote to us. So that one's not even in here, but I thought it was fantastic. But
Thank you.
thanks you. But the first 2 paragraphs is probably all we need. I don't know if we need the third, but I'll bow out. That was just my statements. Anyone else?
I think I like the first and the third paragraph.
You like what?
I like the first and the third paragraph together.
First and third, okay.
I do feel like it's more of an active voice and gives a lot more data or information. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess we don't need all 3, I guess is where I was going.
I agree.
Yeah. And Tom, you even had a question about that, whether one of them was supposed to drop out.
Yeah, it gets lengthy, I think. And it just seems, maybe not duplicative, but I think that it gets, perhaps it's trying to cover so much that you kind of get a little bit lost. My 2 cents, though.
Just out of curiosity, where does this mission statement live?
It's at the beginning
Who
of
reads it? Who's the intended audience?
it's at the beginning of the comprehensive plan document. So
Okay.
it's intended to set the sort of the pace for the rest of the document in terms of the things that we are addressing through the plan, and policies that we come up with that can be based on this vision statement. So it's sort of setting how we want to, the lens that we want to look at our policies through when we get to those different chapters. Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. So it's not going to be like on the website, or
Well, eventually,
Like if-
yeah, because the
if somebody was like Googling Sedro-Woolley, would this come up in a,
like a marketing piece.
yeah.
It would stay in the comprehensive plan if if it were to be used as a marketing piece, that would be something that would be some other later decision and something
Cassandra,
I guess
it's in the
council would
comp
want to
plan.
do.
Comp plan's a big document,
Yeah.
especially a 10-year update. So basically, it's like a book. And I've always said to people, if you ever needed a crystal ball for any community, any city, comprehensive plan is about as close as you can get. So everything that we've been there, and it starts off with the vision statement, and then we'll start going through the different elements, goals, policies, and then the engineering kind of details go in it as to how we get from point A to point B. And when we go through the process in the next several months, we also have to take a look at what we did from the 2014 comp plan, especially on the housing element. Okay, we're going to get into that because we've done a lot in the past 10 years to accommodate the growth based upon the PRDs, UVMUs, and now we have all cottage housing, ADUs. I'm just saying a lot of stuff has been done in the past that needs to roll forward. And that's how we base our calculations for the next 10 years, because a lot of stuff has already been done. So knowing the past of where we started and rolling forward is going to be really important as we go through this process by year end. It'll be a great experience, by the way. It's good stuff.
Commissioner DeVoynes, go ahead. Are you muted?
I think he is. Yeah.
Oops, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
And I read the comp plan vision statement. I agree with everything with it. Except for I don't envision this being a walkable town
Yeah.
20 years. In the 10 years I've been here, not having cars has become very difficult over the last 10 years because of all the growth around me. And I like it to be walkable in 20 years. I just did a bit practical. If I were providing it, I would agree with everything except the walkability. I just see that being harder and harder to be walkable when you have over population growth.
I agree. Is that only in the second chapter?
I'm sorry.
Or second paragraph, second chapter. It's getting late, past my bedtime.
Yeah.
Second chapter, it says walkable streets.
Yeah. Pedestrian friendly. Yeah, I like it to be. I didn't see how practical that would be.
Yeah. Good point, thank you.
Want to reiterate, the vision statement is what we would like Sedro-Woolley to be
Oh, right.
Not what we
in
have.
2045, not what we have.
This is what our goal is, not what we have, I guess.
Okay.
I have to keep remembering that too.
Okay.
2046. Well, is this something that we have to deal with tonight, or can we?
At this point, we're just looking for feedback.
Feedback,
What's
okay, got it.
missing? What needs to be added?
Okay.
You know, this is edging toward what we intend to present to council, and they
Got it.
will be making the final decision. But we wanted to get planning commission to provide input before we did that.
Okay.
What is your opinion of it? I'd like to hear Nicole and Tom what you guys think.
Well, I think go ahead, Nicole. I think I already did put in some words about this. I think it's lengthy. I think I'd like to see it streamlined a little more. It is a vision statement, so it's not a mission statement like, to serve and to protect kind of thing. But I do think it is getting kind of lengthy and trying to cover every possible thing. But that's my 40,000 foot elevation look at it. So
From my perspective, I like this one a lot better than the three options that they presented to us originally. They felt very dry and didn't seem like they captured Sedro-Woolley truly. This one gets closer to it, in my opinion. I think it is a little bit on the dreamy side of things. I don't know how to better explain that, but you know, because there is only one Sedro-Woolley on Earth sort of thing, it feels very Disney to me.
Yeah.
So I'd like to see this consolidated and maybe just get to the point a little bit better instead of,
We're not the happiest place on earth?
well,
Disneyland, Disney, Sedro.
2045.
World.
but yeah, so I like the first statement, like that feels very putting place, people in a place, you know, that sort of thing. It feels
Agree.
homey and it feels like it has heart. Then we start getting really wordy. So I think a combination of maybe paragraphs 2 and 3, pick out the best points, you know, like I think we should emphasize our best points out of those, kind of combine them, and maybe fix that last sentence a little bit.
You know, on that last sentence, and we're talking about looking forward, that last sentence is kind of backwards looking. So it's got good stuff in it, but instead of through it all, how about moving forward? Sedro-Woolley will stay true to its value and work from there, having the forward view, not what the past view was. So there's good stuff in here, but it can be a wordsmith a little bit differently with more of a forward-looking view based upon foundational things that have done in the past. But it's a start, yeah. Respect the dash, Nicole, right?
That's right, Joe.
Could we email you our ideas?
Absolutely, please do.
Because maybe it's kind of getting late and we could probably think better in the mornings and write to you what we think.
I think that's a good idea. Just don't CC everybody.
No reply all.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right, just directly to Nicole.
Yeah.
Directly to me.
Sorry.
And McGowan.
And, you know, we could then, okay, let's see, then what? Then we would compile it and send it back to everybody, but meet in a planning commission meeting and review it in March. Unless we
feel
want
like
to have a
that
special
is
meeting.
pushing the timeline a little
I am
bit.
concerned.
Yeah. So
We could have well, I don't know, maybe it costs money, but I was going to say we could have an extra meeting in the month just to do that, to review it and do it. So we could be in and out of here in 15 minutes or 45 minutes, depending on how it goes. And
We think we can have a meeting in 15
you know
minutes?
what
I
I'm
love
saying.
that optimism.
but you know what I'm saying? We just stick one
Yeah.
in there and just do this so you can stay on schedule, but not have to get it all done.
I think that'd be great. If you guys are willing to do that, we could, we could even maybe pick next Tuesday. If you guys are willing to do that, we'd be happy to set it up.
If it was the only thing on the agenda, I would,
Okay,
Say if it's in
we
and out,
promise.
then-
is that too fast?
Well,
Want to do it 2 weeks?
I don't think that's too fast at all.
Okay.
I would like to do a special meeting, maybe just to show of hands of who can make it, because we would need a quorum.
Yeah,
I
make
want to be
sure.
sure we're not going to just put something together and three people show up.
So the
Yeah.
question is, who can meet here next Tuesday at 6:30? Is that the question?
I can.
Yeah, I can if we decide to do it. But
Yeah,
I can.
I can make
2,
it.
3,
What was the date?
4.
I'm sorry.
The date?
25th.
Tuesday, 25th.
Thank you.
does that run into your your notifications though? Do we have to make it 2 weeks to get it so you have time to
No,
put out notification?
24 hours, I think, is
Okay.
all you need.
February
24
25th.
hours for a public meeting, yeah.
Oh, okay.
February 25th at 6:30.
That'd be really great. And folks on the screen, on
6:30.
online, you guys can make it too?
Commissioner,
Yeah.
we have 2 more comments up top here. Commissioner Fatizzi, I think I saw you first.
No, I just raised my hand earlier from something else, and anyway, I should have just put it down, but I can be here next
Next Tuesday.
next Tuesday, the
Okay.
25th, in chamber too.
Okay, great.
And Commissioner DeVoyne, your hand is up too.
we usually have a Santa Fisheries Board meeting the fourth Tuesday. So I'm checking right now, but we usually have Santa Fisheries on the fourth Tuesday.
Oh, who has a
I'm
meeting?
checking.
He might have another obligation.
Yeah, I have a board meeting with Santa Fisheries
Oh, you have a board meeting? Okay.
next Tuesday at 6:30.
Thursday or Tuesday?
Next Tuesday.
Tuesday, oh.
Is
Is that a conflict?
Yeah.
Yes, I have a conflict.
Oh, you
with
have a
next
conflict, I get-
Tuesday.
Well,
Sounds like we will still have a quorum, though. We
And-
want to still move
well,
forward with that date.
And Commissioner DeVoyne, you can always, we're inviting everybody to get comments
Right.
back to us.
Yeah,
So
you're-
we'd like to have your comments back too,
Yeah,
which
go-
we
go
would
ahead
then bring
and-
to the meeting.
did you hear, Tom? Commissioner DeVoynes, you can send your comments to Nicole via email, and we can still have a quorum next Tuesday and talk about your comments if they're in there.
Yeah.
Okay?
Only to Nicole, not to Tom.
Yeah, send it
Yeah,
to
send them
Nicole.
to me.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, I'd like
Tuesday,
to,
Tuesday, I have a meeting every Tuesday of the month.
Okay.
okay.
Sorry about that.
No,
I
that's
would like
fine.
to request from all the commissioners, if you have some ideas on how this specific updated vision statement could be revised.
Right. Only that one.
Only this one.
Yeah.
Just, we're trying to get to a final product and quickly.
Right.
So try not to rewrite the whole thing if you can help it.
No. Only the one labeled February 13th, 2025. Not the three options above it. If I understand that right?
I didn't.
Just this, not the three options.
Right.
Right, not in option 1, 2, and 3. We're just looking at the one that says comprehensive plan
Yes.
vision statement, February 13th.
Right, yes.
We're
okay.
trying to narrow that down and make it less wordy. That one right there, yeah. So, okay, we in agreement? Sounds like it.
So next Tuesday's on,
Next Tuesday at 6:30.
yeah, okay.
25th will be right here.
Excellent, thank you, guys.
Okay, and during this week, send your comments to Nicole via email. And we have one last thing, I think. Oh, if we're done, that's 8:40 for that vision statement. And Tom, I think you have one more thing.
Yeah, I just, because we had low attendance at our joint meeting, and I at first felt bad, thinking, well, maybe I didn't get that information out to you guys, or didn't remind you or something. And talking with staff, we thought, what we'd like to do is put this on here to give you a chance to tell us how we can help you with reminders of meetings and that sort of thing. I don't know, Nicole, if you had a couple more words on that?
Nothing more to add, just, I want to make it very clear, sometimes we do have those joint planning commission and council meetings that do occur on different times, so, it's good to be checking your email regularly. Sometimes we have updates from the city, sometimes there's key information, like, hey, I didn't include this in the packet, oops, here, quick thing. So it's always a good idea to be checking that regularly. And I also appreciate phone calls or emails if you plan on not attending a meeting, just so we can plan ahead for in the event that we don't have a quorum, something like that. So just clear communication is always helpful both ways.
I'll lead off on this one since I always intend to make the meetings, especially now I've given up my soccer position, so I don't have conflicts that way. And my apologies for being old school, in that I used to doing everything on paper, and I never missed meetings when I got physical packets. That was, they would come on Thursday, and I would do my stuff during the month collecting things, and then as soon as I got the packet, then I knew to go through it and do it. I'm on 3 different computers at once. I have my school computer, my personal computer, and the city's computer, and unfortunately this one gets last priority in a sense, because I'm just sick of looking at screens by the time I get to this. But anyway, nuts and bolts. If you could send me an email to my school address, letting me know if you, or a message to my school phone maybe, letting me know, emails are easier, that that there's that there's new information, or that the packet's been sent in the email. That would really be helpful for me, because I'm on my screen 6.5 hours at school. So that's a good reminder for me to get on this thing and read all the information. And I think that would make it better for me. So, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Something I could do is, I'm pretty sure I've taken down everyone's personal emails. I'll have to check. But
Or you could text me also on my phone.
I'd prefer to keep it over email.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
it would come from my work email to your private. So it wouldn't have any specific meeting materials. It would just say, hey, meeting materials, check your email. Something along those lines.
Right.
Just a quick reminder on your personal account, just to check that. I'm sure it would get it seen more quickly.
I think.
Yeah, I kind of echo the commissioner, because I'm on my computer 8, 9, 10 hours a day too. My work email is kind of my priority. I rarely check my personal email, and a couple times a month I check the city email. So I'll make a conscious effort of, trying to check my email more often. But if there is something that's a little out of the ordinary, it's not the third Tuesday of the month. It would be nice if there could just be like a heads up to our other emails, work emails, personal emails, to be like, hey, reminder, check your city email. There's, something out of the norm,
I just need to talk to Woody and configure Outlook on mine. I have multiple windows up all the time, so loading up Outlook and having that as an open window, it's no big deal. So that's just something on my end that's easy to do, and I'll talk to him about it. But I'm like Cassandra, I barely look at the city stuff every, maybe a couple times a month and before a meeting. So, but I would like to have it, because there are things that come out that I've seen in the past that it's no big deal to have that window open. But let me talk to Woody. I'll get that straightened out on my end. And Ashton, thank you for tracking me down. So it was no big deal to get in there via Zoom. But I didn't realize what I was getting into. I was like, okay, wow, this is serious stuff. Here we go. Anyway, I'll talk to Woody.
Speaking of Woody, are you still on? I assume.
Yes, I am.
Yeah,
And you wanted me to.
We just need to talk how to get the Outlook set up on just my regular computers, so I could pull up the city email at the same time. It's no big deal. I'm sure it's a 5-minute discussion. We can have that done.
Yeah, and so anyway, Woody, you had a message that you wanted me to relay to the planning commission about laptops, but it went in one ear and out the other. Could you remind us?
Yeah, so we're trying to move away from the iPads, since both of the city council members and the planning commission members have expressed that they are inadequate. And since they are no longer receiving security updates, we have purchased laptops to replace those iPads. I think 2 of the planning commission members have accepted those laptops, and I'll be reaching out to them to help them out with the emails. And hopefully we can not have email be an issue with that. But if any other planning commission members would like to move away from the iPad to a laptop, please let me know. Joe, I'm getting a giant thumbs up from you. And
talk about this.
We're slowly reaching the modern era, and we now have remote support software. So as long as the computers have internet access, you should be able to reach out to me, and I'll be able to remote on and help you out with whatever issues. If you guys don't have my work cell phone, Nicole or Tom can provide that for you.
Thanks, Woody. Sounds like a great idea. And
Thanks for your help getting it set up. They were really fast. Him and his associate, they got this thing set up for me in like 10 minutes out here in the lobby, and
nice.
I was ready to roll, and I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And Commissioner DeVoynes? Mute. The mute button. Darn mute buttons. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm being written a laptop. I'm sorry, I was muted.
Okay, there's
Yeah, we
another
can
vote for
definitely get you
laptop.
set up with one, Matt.
Yeah,
And
please.
if there's anything that we could do to kind of help you better utilize the system, please let us know and we'll do everything we can to make that work for you.
Yeah, thank you. Well,
Sounds
laptop
great.
would be easier than an iPad.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, with that said, if there's nothing else, can I get a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to
There's something
adjourn.
else.
Just one thing, how does that work when it goes to our personal emails? Does that open that up to public records disclosure? Just wanted to ask.
It's my understanding,
So,
maybe Woody could cover it better, actually. Go for it, Woody.
so all city email communication is archived as soon as it hits our email servers. If something does get requested, we will pull all the city emails, and as long as you are not utilizing the private email of yours for daily business, you should be fine. But transitory messages like, hey, please check your city email, that won't necessitate you signing a form saying that you have searched your personal devices and emails for city-related requests. So as long as we leave it to basic information like that, you guys should be fine.
Thank you.
And that's exactly what I intend to do.
I'm going to put reminders on this phone rather than my calendar at home that I never look at, and it'll ding. So that's my new thing, if I remember to do that. But thanks for the reminder. Anything else before we ask for a motion? Motion to adjourn, anyone?
Oh, I
Already
always
made
get to
it.
do this one.
Motion to adjourn.
Everybody jumps at the rest of, yeah, I make a motion that we.
Commissioner
call it
Huggins
tonight, yeah.
makes a motion. I heard something up there. Commissioner Fatizzi, second.
I was the first one that said it, but I'll second.
Okay, you guys tied.
Sorry, Joe.
Both of you are in there. Those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Hi.
Okay, we're out of here. Thank you for everyone. Thanks for all your hard work and effort.
Thank you.